so plain and precious. Finally, the Book of Mormon is the keystone of testimony. Just as the arch crumbles if the keystone is removed, so does all the church stand or fall with the truthfulness of the Book of Mormon. The enemies of the church understand this clearly.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. So, I'm back, despite a panic and scare this morning. I'm back. I learned last night from news on YouTube, which YouTube is social media, but there has always been confusion when the news says that the majority of Americans, especially the youth, are getting their news from social media. And it didn't make sense to me because the press have channels on YouTube. And so technically, I get my news from social media. But that's not what they mean. What they mean is people, just normal average people who are not press credentialed, who are getting on social media, regardless of whether it's Twitter, Facebook, which are now Meta and PornX, and YouTube, which is no longer YouTube, it's Corporation Tube. But there are individuals who get on and express their opinions about things, and they do this shock value stuff, of which they outright lie, purposely twisting the message by leaving things out and lying about what they do cover. And other people, for some reason, trust them as a legitimate source and share and spread it around themselves. And so in the news yesterday, I saw a whole bunch of coverage of Osama bin Laden's letter resurrected from the grave to Americans, and how it's being spread all over Twitter, and people are believing it. And Twitter, waited until after it had a million postings before they finally took it down, which was too late, they claim. Well, I just Google searched it, found the government, our United States government, had it on file for anybody to obtain, read, and download. But regardless of the fear stoked by the press, I remember at the beginning of the Hamas Holy Islamic Holocaust War against Israel, notice how I worded that? Hamas drew first blood. That the press was all coming out and saying, oh, social media is spreading fake news about the war, and we're concerned that people trust these uncredentialed, unreliable sources that are clearly lying, and now, after over a month, the press no longer talks about that, other than for the Osama bin Laden thing. And I see that social media is not just for the average person to become popular with his opinion, but that it was used in the 2016 election to rig our presidential election, as Russia was the recipient of the Facebook data through Cambridge Analytica that was a part of Steve Bannon's business at the time, which he had to resign when Britain held him accountable, and took Cambridge Analytica to court and won. But the United States of America, nope, did nothing about it. And so, yeah, the whole Brexit thing, yeah, that was also the attack of that Cambridge Analytica with Steve Bannon, as he also used that to rig the European elections to also put in fascist dictators in as many countries as he could to purposely destabilize the European Union, as that was his whole intention, as he was interviewed. Can't remember the news source, but I remember Rachel Maddow covering that interview. I don't think it was BuzzFeed. Can't remember. But yeah, he purposely did all that to cause the chaos that we now are experiencing. And Russia used that data that they obtained from Paul Manafort, from Cambridge Analytica and Steve Bannon, to send Americans advertising for the election to try to influence our vote. And they succeeded in many instances, as Americans, even my neighbors in West Valley City, were reposting them, saying, I'd rather be Russian than vote Democrat. And people, for some reason, are easily hypnotizable. They believe whatever is designed for them to believe because of how they use social media. And that's what's driving this attack on Israel through social media, where you have people who were never taught, apparently, about the Holocaust and World War II, Nazi Germany, who now are calling for a Holocaust again, as they claim they're pro-Palestinian. But when you finally hear what they're having to say in their protest, they are calling for a Holocaust of the Israelis. They're not just calling for a ceasefire. They're blaming Israel for war crimes. They're blaming Israel for causing the war, and thus denying that Hamas was ever responsible. That is just Israel who picked a fight with the Palestinians, won't leave them alone to live in peace, and that's just not true. But when you trust somebody's opinion that may have come from Russia or Saudi Arabia or Korea, North Korea, or China, you're easily manipulated. Even the COVID, social media, again, was tampering with the medical information that was also trying to get out at the same time. And so people, for some reason, are unaware of how to identify authorities on certain subject fields, and are easily hypnotized by those who are not authorities and have no clue about the subject matter themselves. And so you got all these billions of people on social media who know nothing of the history of Israel and are demanding death to the people who are supposed to own the land. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, however, has been able to protect Mormons from such scandalous social media attacks. Despite the steaming meanies or whatever they were at BYU, they were TikTok as well. They'd do little clips as they'd come up to little jailbait co-eds and talk to them about how the church is racist, and they're like clueless and had no idea, and then they'd say something that exposes that they're racist. And they would get millions of views, and everybody would laugh at the Mormons for being evil. When I've been telling you that for years, and nobody wants to watch my channel because I'm not entertaining. I am the foremost anthropologist of the ancient Middle East, and so thus I know the history. I am an expert on the history. So not only should I be referenced to for all things regarding the Hamas-Israel war, which I'm not being, because nobody wants to acknowledge authority figures, those who are experts in the field. Everybody thinks they know what's right with their opinion, but it also means that I am the foremost expert and authority on all things Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And Mormons can't come to grips with that because they've been brainwashed into thinking only the president of the church is the authority. Maybe some of the other prophets, depending on the Mormon. But no, nobody else. And that's how they've been protected from social media misinformation. And so when the prophets blatantly lied to you, you don't see it as a Mormon, because you're just believing whatever they tell you, just as you do with social media for other subject matters. And so I had on my video, this is a comment reply video, historic LDS church breaking news, first ever Kenyan apostle replaces M. Russell Ballard. Over 1.3K views. As it's divided 50% as to likes and dislikes. You don't see the dislikes. You only are allowed to see the likes if you're signed in. However, YouTube let me still see the likes on a video I was watching. It didn't erase them because I wasn't signed in. That was weird. YouTube is really screwing up their system here. But anyway. And so a Margie Van Tassel commented, your reference to 2 Nephi 24:12 do not coincide with what you are saying. Just because I didn't put the thumbnail picture that I made months ago, you're supposed to know that I know the subject matter. And that you're supposed to look it up. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Okay? Art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? So, is this some spirit entity that's doing this? And yeah, Mormons would say yeah. Spirits have power over people, regardless of whether they let them do it or not. No, this is a human being that does this. This is Jewish prophecy, even though it's Christians in the Latin Vulgate who put in Lucifer, the Roman deity. Yeah, you didn't know that, did you? And so why is it in the Book of Mormon? Again, I'm the one who figured this out, and nobody else has. And critics, you're supposed to be going, oh man, Travis did it again. Why are we not listening to him more often? Oh, right. Critics of the church also believe whatever their opinion is. And so in Mormon's view, yeah, that's why you're the Antichrist Korahors, is because you're just believing the hate comments, which the Mormons are told by the prophets is not authoritative. And you wonder why the Mormons won't leave the church? And so there's a number of historical, scriptural things involved with this. But it's a prophecy, simply put. A Jewish author prophecy. And critics know very well it's a contemporary written book before in the 1820s. But they don't understand what that means. And so they all blame Joseph. Joseph had nothing to do with the composition of the Book of Mormon. That is an established fact. Linguistic science. Critics do believe in linguistic science when it suits their purposes to trash the Book of Mormon. But you're not understanding how it works. Sidney Rigdon is the major author of the Book of Mormon, but this is part of the rewritten 116 pages. And yes, critics, me again, Joseph Smith Sr. I use the scientific processing and methodology and theory development and testing for confirmation to establish facts. That's why I'm the foremost anthropologist of the ancient Middle East. And so he, Smith Sr., is prophesying here. He knows that this was not in the Jewish text. He knows this comes from the Latin Vulgate. And yet he's still putting it in the Book of Mormon. Just like the other passage that combines the Septuagint with the biblical Hebrew text of Isaiah, the ships of Tarshish, that combination. He was responsible for merging those two together. He's trying to let you know how to understand the Book of Mormon in the learning of the Jews. He's not trying to fool you into thinking this came from actual gold plates, which, again, you are unaware that he was a master mason of the York Rite Lodge, not Scottish Rites Lodge, of Canandaigua, New York, for 9/11/1826. I'm, again, me, coming forth with the Book of Mormon. That day, that's when the Book of Mormon was born. And using Junior as the Christ for Mormons. No, there's only one Christ, and that's Jesus. Yeah, go to hell. Everybody just gets misinformed and they just think it's right. Dear God. And so, by using this, he's saying that that's the baby name meaning. Just as Isaiah also indicates the name, and thus Joseph Smith Sr. puts that in here too from Isaiah, that the name of the Christ is Emmanuel. These are names, people. But when you use your Christian bias of hypnotism, you see these as other characters. For Mormons, they say Lucifer and Emmanuel, who they don't even consider Emmanuel. It's like, oh, right, Isaiah does say Emmanuel, doesn't it? It's because they're so used to Jesus, and maybe even Jehovah from the temple of Brigham Young. But regardless, I mean, I literally having to inform Mormons that Jesus in Hebrew is not Jehovah, but Joshua. It's like, what? No. I just want to scream. And so, what? Somebody's trying to log in Edge. Yeah, block them. I don't use Edge. Unbelievable. Live, and somebody's trying to hack through a system I don't even use. Dear God. Well, at least finally my security system is doing something. After this morning's scare. Dear God. And so, as you see, down in verse 14, right? Because you do know how to read, right? You're not just listening to me and doing what Margie did, as she's clearly unaware of how this is connected to Russell Marion Nelson. But you see verse 14, there's Emmanuel. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That's the sun god at noonday. That should sound familiar to Mormons, especially those who go on a mission. I saw a pillar of light above the brightness of the sun, descend and blah, blah, blah. I don't memorize. You guys were memorizing it. And then Joseph Smith. You believe it's Moroni because you don't even bother to check that it's Nephi. But regardless, how does he described as? The sun god at noonday. It's Emmanuel. It's the Jewish Christ. So there you see Lucifer. There you see Jesus as Joshua, the Yah of salvation, who is Emmanuel. But that's too complicated for you. You don't understand the learning of the Jews. But this has to do with baby name meanings. Not only is Emmanuel the baby name meaning, surname, of your Christ, Mormons, Lucifer is the founder of the great and abominable church. Because you know this. Do you know about Nephi's dream? Chapter 13, verse 5, and the Malachi said unto me, behold, the formation of a church. Notice how I said Malachi? But it says angel, Javis. Who appeared to Joseph Smith again in the second vision? It says he's a messenger, doesn't he? Oh, Malachi, from Hebrew. Angel, Christianized, revision. So thus, evangelical, messenger. Behold the formation of a church, which is most abominable above all other churches, which slayeth the saints of God. For Catholics, saints are St. Patrick, St. Michael, and Gabriel. Those who have been mythologicalized by the Catholic Church to have performed some holy miracle that can't be done by normal humans, and thus became saints. Is that what they're talking about? No. This is a prophecy of the future. I've been going over with you for a long time now. Years. That First Nephi chapter 1 tells us the starting of the latter days. The starting of the Book of Mormon is the start of the latter days and the ministry of the Christ. Exact same pattern as those Gospels, with the same exact date, of the same exact character, with just a different name. Instead of Lehi, it's Jesus. That's the learning of the Jews. And so this is after that date, at the beginning of the Book of Mormon. Behold, the formation of a church, which is most abominable of all other churches, after the date. September 2017. Don't argue with me. That's the fact. Because I'd have to go over Revelation chapter 12, verses 1, 2, and 5, and then you say, well, why 5? And then I'd have to refer to the Joseph Smith translation, and thus the Book of Mormon, and go over astronomy with you, and have to explain how Jupiter retrogrades for a pregnancy period in each constellation, etc., etc., etc. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. But nobody does. And so this is after 2017. When who takes over? Verse 6. And it came to pass that I beheld this great abominable church, and I saw the devil, that he was the founder of it. So not only will there be a president put on the throne by Russia in 2017, again, I don't have time to explain it. You're also going to have thereafter Lucifer take over the great and abominable church. And what's he going to do? Again, you didn't finish reading verse 5, did you? He slays Mormons. He yokes them to Jesus. And they Again, if you don't know what I was just talking about, you do not watch Conference. And so, financial wealth is what they're focused on. Anybody familiar with tithing and the scandal with the whistleblower and the SEC? And oh look, harlots. Now there's some confusion. There's whores, there's harlots, there's fornicators, there's adulterers. And so it can be kind of confusing as to who is which. And then there's Jezebels. I don't have time to go over each of the definitions, but polygamy. And so guess what also happened in 2019? By Lucifer. And so, for the praise of the world, do they destroy Mormons, bringing them down into captivity. Pay your tithing, or Jesus is going to smite you down. Jesus is going to murder you. And you fall for that? If you were to hear Warren Jeffs say that Jesus was going to murder the FLDS members if they did not storm the prison and free him, you'd go, oh yeah, because he doesn't have authority like Nelson does. Right? But if Nelson did it, would you seriously consider it? And I'm sorry, but yes, you would. Because he's already done stuff, and you did it. And you died, or your family members died, because you're actually still listening to me. Nelson is guilty of murdering you. Murdering missionaries. Why do you think I've been putting those 3 sister missionaries, 2 of whom have a super sacred secret that apparently only I know? And your secret's safe with me. I'm not explaining it. But, yeah, you're supposed to pay attention to my pictures, because that's part of my message too. And people just don't. I don't get it. I mean, apparently you're only interested if believing it is thing to do. You know, like a Kenyan apostle. You're supposed to see that and go, no, the church is racist. They would never allow a Kenyan apostle. This has got to be fake news. And you missed the point. You're supposed to go, oh right, the church would never call a black apostle, and therefore the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the great and abominable church the Book of Mormon is prophesying about. They prophesied of Russell Marion coming after 2017. How do I know that? Because they prophesy of Monson's death. Revelation chapter 12. It's verse 4. Stars falling from the tail of the dragon. That's when Monson died. I was having trouble figuring that one out. I had found the sign of the red dragon. Do they call him red? Or the sign of the dragon. I found that one after I had found the 23rd of September 2017. All because I knew when Fox 13 News Utah announced the total solar eclipse in 21st of August 2017, I knew we were in the latter days. And so since I knew that I was the only one who knew this information, began to cram and start publishing on Amazon and doing YouTube videos to try to help inform and educate people, as I am the foremost expert. And yes, still to this day, because the church was unaware of me at that time, thinking that they had controlled me. So naive. Yeah, that's my number one video still to this day. And yes, it's very poor quality. But that's not the point of my videos. It's not about presentation. That's Relief Society who focuses on presentation and then read from the manual. The elders, no. They figure out the topic and they teach the topic. They don't worry about decoration distractions. That's a Relief Society thing. You know why the Relief Society room is always designed differently? That's why. It's to placate you women. Because the church is sexist. And they're purposely feeding that misconception that you have to give a perfect presentation in order to be perfect, when all you're doing is reading from the manual, to think that now you're good with God. And then afterwards, despite a perfect presentation, you still think it wasn't good enough, and then you go into depression for the whole week and don't want to talk to anybody. When people come up to you and say, "Oh, that was perfect. Oh, you did such a good job. The decorations were beautiful." You don't believe them. You call them names. "You're cheating on my husband. You harlot." And so yes, baby name meetings. Let's just wrap this up. I'm done. And so, Russell, do you know that there's this thing called Google search? It means red. Have you never bought a baby book? Are you unaware that names have meaning? And so red, I have to redo my... Because you get all excited about the Book of Mormon prophesying of the coming of Joseph Smith, but when I'm telling you here that the Book of Mormon also prophesied about not only your Christ, which you don't believe, but Russell Marion Nelson. Did you catch on to this? The Book of Mormon prophesied of the coming forth, naming him, just like they did Joseph, just like Joseph Smith Sr. prophesied of Junior. He prophesies of the name of the false Christ of the great and abominable church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Russell, red. Marion. This goes back to the whatever people in which that's the star of the sea. And so, no, there is no star of a sea except out in outer space. But that's prophetic and symbolic and blah, blah, blah. Don't have time to explain it for you. And so the red star in space is Mars, the red planet. And according to the theology, Mars is the husband of Venus. That's the theme song in the description below. Venus is the girl. Da, 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 da. Yeah, let me throw this one away afterwards. I covered the topics. Venus. Venus, goddess of... See, Mormons complain that I'm an apostate Korahor who doesn't study his scriptures. Or when I quote scriptures, it's now twisted. Because Mormons are illiterate. And so, Venus. Do I need to go back to 2 Nephi chapter 24, verse 12? Son of the morning. That's in the Jewish scriptures. That does refer, as everyone knows, to Venus. And why does Venus never ascend to the Most High Sun God at noonday? Because the sun god at noonday. When he rises, the sky lights up. We no longer see the darkness of space, with the stars scattered among it. And so Venus, being inside Earth towards the sun, in case you haven't learned astronomy, therefore can never be in the noonday position, like Jupiter, Mars, Saturn, and the other planets that we can't see with the naked eye, because there's only 5 visible planets. And so Mercury and Venus are either seen right before the sun rises or right after the sun sets. Never during the middle of the night. Never at the southern position. Never. So thus, the Jewish author of Isaiah put that in there to educate you. And so by putting Lucifer to it, that's the inverted pentagram. The falling star from heaven. And so I didn't obviously refer to on 9/9 in that video, as I previously did, which is what she was supposed to go. I wonder if he has some previous videos that explains this. The Perseid meteor showers were in full force on Nelson's birthday. How art thou fallen from heaven? The Book of Mormon prophesied this, Mormons. And so guess what happened? Joseph Smith translation, Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. You didn't even bother to look it up, did you? Sign in the heaven in the likeness of things on the earth. That's the learning of the Jews. Kabbalah, specifically. I don't have time to explain it. Again. On 9/11, 2023, Nelson tells us 3 weeks later, he fell, physically fell, after the Perseids fell from heaven on his birthday. All right here in the Book of Mormon. Prophesied. Critics are like, no, it can't be true. I refuse to listen. And Mormons, no, it can't be true. I refuse to listen. Oh my God. Because your opinions have already been made up and you refuse to budge. You refuse to listen to authoritative sources. What a start to this Saturday. And so, yes, we're waiting for the day that shall burn as an oven. And so even though social media does try to tear Mormons and critics away from the truth, Mormonism is its own unique disaster scenario, a sabotage system to keep people in bondage mentally, not just financially in bondage, with extortion threats of death. So, there you have it. Sorry, Margie. The Book of Mormon is true. Sorry, critics. Sorry, Mormons.